I went to Great Lakes for the training. I was up there, what was it, 8, 9 weeks. I was up there in training. From there, I left training and went out to my first duty station, which was Point Mugu, California, Ventura County. Beautiful place, best place I ever was stationed. It's now Joint Base Ventura, along with Port Hueneme, which is the Seabee base out there, and therefore, and now it's a joint base out there, which still exists, which is great. And from there, my assignment went. From there. I got sent down to Coronado to train with the SEALs because I was going to be heading to Vietnam to be put on the riverboats. And at that time, I learned I had to do a second MOS, and the second MOS is a job in the service. And my second MOS was going to be as a corpsman because I had first aid training because I was on the Hillsville Ambulance Corps before I went into the service also. And when I was going through the training, the chief petty officer who was in charge of me, he came to me and says, "Pinke, you have a problem." I says, "What's the matter, Chief?" I says, "The president sold your boat." I says, "Can I go home?" And he gave me an HE double, and he turned around and he says, "No, you can't, but I will give you options." And in turn, he gave me options, and I wound up being a naval advisor over in Vietnam. I did finish up the first part of SEALs training. I'm not a SEAL, but I had the training. And I'll tell you right now, a lot of the training I got with the Scouts helped me immensely going through that training, especially on survival. And when I went over to Vietnam, I was a naval advisor, and I was teaching the Vietnamese how to use our cooking equipment because that was during the Nixon years when Nixon turned over the riverboats to the Vietnamese. And in turn, we were teaching the Vietnamese. There was about 12 of us and about 40 Vietnamese cooking for about 600 military personnel. So we would supervise them. They would be doing most of the work, but we'd be supervising them, and they'd be serving it out to the troops, et cetera, et cetera. There was two things that happened over there which they didn't have in World War II. They had one of them in Korea. Actually, they probably had both over there. Over in Korea, the enemy stopped wearing uniforms. In Vietnam, very few of the enemy wore uniforms. Also, you did not know where the front line was. In Korea, they basically knew where the front lines were. In Vietnam, you never knew because the person standing next to you might turn around and try to kill you that night. You never knew. And you could rocket attacks at any time. And working with the people, stuff like this, they gave me a little insight as to how they felt. And when the rocket attacks came in, they would hit the bunkers, or they would turn around and hit the airplanes and stuff like this. They didn't hit our barracks. And I turned around and says, "You know, why don't you want me to go to the bunker?" Very simply, you stay in your barracks, you'll be fine. I says, "Why?" He says, "Because when you leave, that become our home." They were already planning when I was over there in 1970, and I left here in 72. They were already planning on taking over what we were going to leave behind because they knew we were leaving, and everything was being redone and fixed up and everything nice. So in other words, they knew they were going to get all kind of good stuff once we left. I got a chance to meet up, and I went over to an orphanage over in China Beach. We met up with one of the squadrons, VQ-1, which was home base out of the Philippines, but it had a barracks there right next to ours, and we hooked up with them because they were going over to an orphanage over there, and the orphanage would have children over there who were of mixed blood. They were not allowed. They were shunned by society. Matter of fact, they were called Gregoi, dirt of the earth. And they could have been French Vietnamese. They could have been American Vietnamese. They could have been Australian Vietnamese. There was 10 different countries over there doing it. We were doing most of the fighting, but in turn, there was 10 different countries that were occupying that place since World War II. And in turn, I went over there, and most of them were being taught by nuns. And they were better educated than most of the kids in the local community because they all could speak French, English, and Vietnamese. But yet when it came time to bring them into society, they were shunned from society because they did not want a mixed race. They wanted a pure race. because of their ethnicity and their ancestry. So we turned around and we worked with those kids, and I understand when Da Nang fell, most of those kids, they were able to get out via transports, either by boat or by plane, whatever. Most of those got taken out of the China Beach area and brought over to the Philippines and were educated, and a lot of them were brought back here to the United States.